Welcome to the Eric Williams Auditorium. Please take a moment off from what you are doing for this safety briefing. There are 3 emergency exits, one on either side of the stage and the main entrance. These are clearly marked in green and white exit signs. Look around you now and locate the exits that are closest to you. Bear in mind that your closest exit may be behind you. The exits and aisles must be kept clear at all times. In case of an emergency, an alarm will sound, and you will immediately proceed to your nearest exit in a calm and orderly manner. Once through the exits, please move away from the building and assemble at the muster point located at the eastern car park of the La Joya compound. When at the muster point, please wait for further instructions from the security department. Smoking is prohibited. Smoke detectors are located throughout the auditorium. There are 2 washrooms located just forward of the main entrance. Also equipped with sensitive smoke alarms. The phones be switched off at this time. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the program.
And may God bless our nation. Forged from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare, side by side we stand, highlands of the blue Caribbean Sea, this our native land, we pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Forged from the love of liberty in the fire.
Caesar, we now invite Reverend Terence Caesar.
So let's adopt a posture for prayer. Merciful and loving God, as we gather here as your people, we pray that you take control of the discussion, the deliberations that will be shared here this evening. Dear God, as a country of Trinidad and Tobago, We have experienced too many bloodshed, too many innocent lives lost, too many bloods on our streets. So we pray, dear God, that you will open our hearts and our minds, open our tongues, so that we may freely discuss and share ideas and plans that may be able to go forward and help alleviate this crime situation. That it may be able to help us to live together in unity the way you have always planned it to be. That we may be able to respect each other and live together as the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago that you meant us always to be. Take control of the deliberations. Bless all that will share and discuss here this evening. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to welcome our moderator this evening, who is our honorable political leader and leader of the opposition, the Honorable Rampersad, Sister SC, and now bring our panelists of this evening. Invite Mr. Daisley to join us, please, on the stage. Professor Daisley. You all can have your seats. So ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our moderator this evening, the Honorable Rampersad. She is joined by Professor Hubert Daisley, Dr. Indira Rampersad, Mr. Gary Griffith, as well as Mr. Renee-Enriquez. So we begin this evening's program shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin this evening's program, I'd like to welcome again our moderator, our leader of the opposition, the Honorable Rampersad.
Thank you very much, and I say a great blessed evening to all of you, especially invited guests, of course, all distinguished panelists. We'll introduce them shortly. But I do want to thank those of you who have come from the various embassies. Can we give them a round of applause for the international flags? The national community is very important. I'm very happy that you can be with us. Members of the various business chambers, NGOs, and members of Joya Complex, we are very, very happy to welcome you here in this very special forum. I think there is no one in our country who will doubt that we are in a crime siege, we are engulfed and beleaguered by crime. And therefore, it is incumbent upon us, as the loyal opposition of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, for us to try to find solutions. As a party, we do have some proposals for the fight against crime. But that is not enough. It cannot be done alone. And that is why we decided to have this forum, to have these distinguished panelists with us and you in the audience. This is for the first of several we'll be having throughout the country. And therefore, we will begin with our panelists first of all, and then we will open the floor. And you are free. Please keep on us about, will help us to share the mic. We would like to hear your suggestions. If you have questions to put to the panelists, we very much welcome those. So can I ask Nicholas to please introduce our first panelist, Mr. Rodriguez, former Coast Guardman.
Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we have with us Mr. Renee-Enriquez Rodriguez, who has close to 17 years experience in the field of security and is currently the owner of TIMA Security Solution and Consultations. Mr. Rodriguez spent 12 years serving Trinidad and Tobago under the banner of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard as an able seaman from 2012 to 2021 and as an ordinary seaman from 2009 to 2012. His training includes safety systems, security administration, and management from Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. He also has studied immigration introduction training at the Ministry of National Security. He is also skilled in investigative courses, cybercrime awareness, and the use of force and conflict management and industrial rescue. Let us please welcome Mr. Renee-Enriquez Rodriguez.
Hi, good day everyone. I am honored today to have this chance to speak with you all. Honorable Leader, Rampersad, thank you for this opportunity. Parliamentary members, senators, invited guests, all other invited guests, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, today I came to give you a different insight on how crime would be, or how crime is perceived. Right? Today I'm honored to be given the opportunity to speak on crucial issues surrounding youth crime, lack of opportunities, and how they affect our youth in society. I was given the opportunity to address matters due to my personal insights and experience growing up on Duncan Street. I strongly believe that understanding the root causes of young violence is crucial to finding effective solutions. As I am before you all here today, I make myself available to be a part of change for the better. This evening, I want to share my story with you, and very brief stories of my community and upbringing on Duncan Street, and why I want to be a beacon of change. I represent countless young men and women in our different communities that face the same struggles against the odds. Where I came from, for example, persons that former Chief Justice Clayton Bernard, Donna Cox, and Martin Joseph share the same environment from which I came from. I am a proud product of Duncan Street, Port of Spain. Some of you may not know where this is, but let me tell you. Duncan Street is near Piccadilly Street, George Street, Nelson Street, Besson Street, and most recently in the media a few hours ago, Simple Street, which is sadly known now as red zones, no-go zones, dangerous places. I know now you know where Duncan Street is, so please don't be detached, stay with me. I know some of you all may also have a mental block, but I urge you, please follow my story. In my time growing up on Duncan Street, it was far from what it is now. I remember the joys of Carnival, Monday, Tuesday, where renowned Peter Minshall, McFarlane, and other big bands would pass right on Duncan Street without a fear or without a problem in the world. When I think back of my summer holidays, it was filled with water bag wars where we can play with children from Upper Nelson Street and St. Paul Street. These were some of the traditions that brought us all together. We would laugh and joke as to who got cornered, and no one escaped the laughter just before the street lights came on, where our parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents would come look for us, and we would often beg and ask, 10 more minutes please. A place where good morning, good evening, ma'am, sir, thank you were always in our mouths, because we were visible and we were heard. We often heard the words, I love you, well done, and I am proud of you, from those we looked up to. We know that now youths in the community don't have the same respect and authority for others. Duncan Street, Queen Street, Nelson Street were gateways to love and a strong community where worries of returning home safely were never a thought on our minds. In those days, I can remember persons from St. Paul Street would be freely able to go on the beat-down to compete in small bowl competitions, just like to take a sweat, because we knew no limitations. Duncan Street was a community where big dreams were forged, just as the challenges it faced. Growing up in a tight-knit community where they say the village raised the child, as a young man, education, sports, and a solid foundation with a fear of God played a vital role in my future. Attending Belmont Secondary School, which back then was a school to frown upon. But that is where I found the love for playing cricket. And I played well enough to catch the eyes of tranquility. A school at a time which was seen to be one of the best schools in Port of Spain. I was fortunate to play cricket with the likes of Dwayne Bravo, Kyron Pollard, Mario Belcon, just to name a few. Yes, the same tranquil we see videos of fights on social media. These schools were dedicated to providing education, faced their own challenges, but through persistence and determination, I overcame the obstacles that came my way. Education and sports were my weapon and my pathway to success and progress. Following my years of schooling, I began to play football with the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard as a young civilian when the opportunity of a lifetime presented itself to me, and I made the decision to serve the Defense Force, where I was able to make a lot of meaningful credentials and forge new friendships as I dedicated my life to protecting my fellow citizens, uphold justice, and fostering a sense of security to our nation. Today I sit here proudly as the founder of my own consultancy company, Tema Security Solutions and Consultations. While this journey was without challenge, it's an easy one. It was filled with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but something I learned from my community on Duncan Street: never give up. However, as I sit before you here, I cannot ignore the alarming trend that plagues our communities, which are gun violence and lack of opportunities. These issues are not isolated incidents or numbers on a report. This represents broken dreams, shattered lives, and broken homes. Then the question arises, what are the root causes of these issues? While it may be easy to single out one factor or entity, the reality is more complex. In my experience, I have witnessed two main reasons hindering the growth of youth in our community. It was invisibility and lack of opportunities. In my time in law enforcement and growing up on Duncan Street, conversation of visibility was often overlooked in any crime discussion, and conversation for betterment within the youth. I also found that no one answered why young persons would resort to crime, guns, and gangs. But what I learned was that once they are feeling oppressed, unheard, and unaccepted, they will push back and do anything to become visible or accepted. For example, the saying of a village raise a child. But if the villages or villagers don't acknowledge or see the child will do everything in that village to burn it out, to feel the warmth of the village. Furthermore, the lack of opportunities available for our youth hinders the ability to flourish and grow. We often use the word opportunities loosely, but what does this really mean? What does opportunity zone? Allow me to give some examples today. Opportunity. No opportunity of a father figure. No opportunity to get help to do homework when you get home. No opportunity of sustainable employment. No opportunity of employment opportunities. No one to speak to when you are facing trauma or problems. No opportunity to go home to a house or a safe haven, and your only version of a role model are the community leaders. We teach and say education is often the way, a great equalizer, has now become a symbol of unattainable dreams for many. Our schools, which was once pillars, have failed to provide the necessary support and resources, leaving our youth in a circle of stagnation and nowhere out. There is also a generation and a general decline of family values, standards, and morality in the youths that need positive role models. Many young black men and women are often encountered with the stigma and preconception of being from Duncan Street, St. Paul Street, Besser Street, that you're a gangster. A person who just came out of jail with a prison record is often stifled with opportunity, even though they can work. The renovation of the Blue Diamond Steel Orchestra on George Street, the police and Duncan Street posts was also done with persons from these communities. While this opportunity was given to them, it was not an opportunity of sustainable income. I stand before you today refusing to believe that there is no hope. I refuse to accept that this is our new reality, that our communities are doomed to be defined by violence and despair. Together, as a united community, invested in the well-being of our future generation, let's make them feel visible again. Let's give them the opportunity of sustainable income, homework centers, bring back trades to the community, and leave out the cameras. Because these youths would believe that, as they would say, it's a puppy show thing. Create a safe space for them once again to open up. By implementing these things, we can bring about change that we so desperately seek. It's time for us to rise up above the negative influence and provide our youth with opportunities. Let us make a stand, my fellow community members. This evening, as I sit before you here, I do so as Renee-Enriquez, a symbol of hope, resilience, and an active brighter future as a testimony of Duncan Street, better values and boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our theme today is crime affects everyone. And we have this platform and this forum to see how best we can make suggestions, raise matters. So I want to thank Mr. Rodriguez very much. From his presentation a short while ago, I think he identified two major points that we must pay attention to. And I want to thank him for sharing his experiences in some beautiful areas that have now become not as safe as they used to be. But those two that I can recall, and of course we are recording everything, so we'll take all suggestions. Of course we want from you in the audience as well. The first one he talked about was invisibility of young persons out there, that they are invisible. They are not recognized. But even more important, he talked about how we can overcome that invisibility with creating opportunities. And I was very happy to hear you, Mr. Rodriguez, outline several areas for opportunity. Yes, there's opportunity in education. There must be. You know, sometimes when we talk about fighting crime, people tend to concentrate on the legislative. Mr. Warner, you're very aware of that, and I welcome you for joining us. Gary is very aware of that too. You talk about fighting crime, and everybody wants legislation. There are thousands of laws in our statute books. And has it stopped crime? No. Has it lessened the crime? No. And so we have to look at other areas and other things that we can do. And Mr. Rodriguez pointed out opportunity. So job opportunities, educational opportunities, opportunities to be recognized, to contribute and be, you know, a good patriotic citizen contributing to the development of our great land. So just again thank Mr. Rodriguez, and you can raise questions at the end. And I'll ask Nicholas to please introduce our second panelist.
Ladies and gentlemen, our second panelist this evening is the esteemed Mr. Gary Griffith. Mr. Griffith is a former Commissioner of Police of Trinidad and Tobago, having served a term in office for the period 18 August 2018 to August 2021. Between May 2010 and September 2013, he served as National Security Advisor to the Honorable Rampersad Prime Minister. He was subsequently appointed as Minister of National Security in Trinidad and Tobago in September 2013. Mr. Griffith was a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force for 15 years, where he attained the rank of Captain in 1998. This attainment to the rank of Captain was achieved in just 6 years, which remains an unprecedented achievement. He was the first military officer from this country to return home with the United Nations Peacekeeping Medal. He has also received the Efficiency Decoration Medal, EDM, for 12 years distinguished service, as well as the Meritorious Medal for duties performed during the 1990 attempted coup in Trinidad and Tobago. Let us welcome this evening Mr. Gary Griffith.
Hey, I love you too. Opposition Leader, the Honorable Rampersad, fellow speakers, citizens of this country who are here to listen and to guide us. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We are not here to give a sales pitch, as we've spent enough time knowing exactly what is not working. We are here today to work together to try to find the right solutions to provide our citizens with your most fundamental right, which is that of safety and security. Now, you know, in most professions, you will have the experts that will go ahead, do the research, and come up with the proper policies. As it pertains to that, it is not that easy. You can have the experts, but what you require is what it is that is happening right now, with persons coming on the floor, listening to you, because the individuals on the ground, you are the ones who are affected. You are the ones who know what is happening. You are the ones that can assist in coming up and formulate a proper national security crime fighting policy that can assist in reducing crime. And this is why we are here today. We are not here just to spit out crime plans. This is why in February last year, this started when I offered to assist the government because I realized they were unable to deal with the situation. The opposition leader, likewise, she did the same. It is unfortunate that other persons would not have the political maturity to understand that you put aside your political party card when it comes to doing what is right for the country. You must always be a patriot before being a politician. And I do thank Rampersad Bisessa for what you have done, because if it is you as a politician, you cannot put aside your hate, your bitterness, your anger, and your political bias to do what is right. Well, then you shouldn't be there. We are here today. We are here today, as I said, if we want to deal with the situation, the catalyst for crime reduction is the implementation of government policies. Now, there are three different aspects to reduce crime: primary, secondary, and tertiary. When I did my training with criminology at the University of Leicester, they showed us that. So, many people will come and say that we have to stop crime by dealing with society, dealing with parents, dealing with teachers, dealing with the community, and praying to God, as Ula continues to do. But those things, yes, they are important. That is known as secondary crime prevention. Secondary crime prevention is putting systems and tools to turn persons away from a life of crime. Tertiary crime prevention involves the criminal justice system. I can spend the next 45 minutes speaking about the things that would have been achieved from 2010 to 2015 dealing with the criminal justice system by a Ministry of Justice being formed specifically to deal with the problems of recidivism. Because we have a high recidivism rate due to poor rehabilitation and the problems that we have in the criminal justice system. I can speak for another 45 minutes of the other ministries that we had from 2010 to 2015 through the Ministry of Sport, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Youth Affairs, different ministries that would have assisted to get young persons away from a life of crime. But these things take time. You will see the difference in a few years' time. What happens is that the way to reduce crime immediately is known as primary crime prevention. That is hard targeting, deterrence, a rapid response, high visibility, strong policing, good law enforcement. And you would have seen it. It is not coincidental that from 1991 to 1995, crime went up every single year. From 95 to 2001, crime went down almost every single year, to the point that it reached less than 100. From 2001 to 2010, it went up every year. From 2010 to 2015, it went down every year. From 2015 to 2023, it has gone up every year, except for the last 18 months when I was Commissioner of Police. So it shows the catalyst of crime reduction is the implementation of government policies. And again, going back, three critical posts. Well, it has a big part to play. It has to do with the Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, and the Commissioner of Police. And you would have seen that the Prime Minister doesn't need to be an expert as it pertains to crime. But when you look at it, you had one Prime Minister where in 2014, it was the highest reduction in serious crime in 31 years. And then, I didn't call names. And then, 7 years later, you had another Prime Minister with the highest spike in crime in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And it says a lot. So by you thumping your chest to state that you are chair of the National Security Council, that is not what is required. What is required is to have a Prime Minister who is not a security expert, but has the capability to understand how to lead, how to manage, how to listen, how to support, how to delegate, and then to direct. And that is what we did in that National Security Council in 2010 to 2015, where we would have seen things such as the National Security Special Operation Group, the National Operations Center, the National Security Training Academy, 12 dormant vessels acquired for 1.2 billion less than the 2.4 billion OPVs, and also the situation of a rapid response unit. All of this played a part towards the highest reduction in serious crime, as I said, in 31 years. As Commissioner of Police, likewise, policies being driven from an emergency response patrol, an operational command center, a commissioner's command center, gender-based violence unit, GPS tracking on vehicles, training police officers in that customer service training so that you wouldn't have what you have seen in St. Joseph Police Station in the last few weeks, from phones being thrown, people being told where the police station is. Had I been Commissioner of Police, they would have been suspended immediately. And that is where it is that type of leadership is required, which is why that it is important that the public trust and confidence in the police is so important. In 2018, that public trust and confidence was 14% based on one commissioner. At the end of 2021, the public trust and confidence in the police was 59%, the highest rise in any arm of the public sector, and now it has gone down to 8%. So it is not the police service, it has to do with leadership, management, accountability, and measurement of performance. I want to make sure I stay within the 15 minutes before I get roped out. So I just want to say quickly, so we can come up with the policies, the plans, the political will, but there's something that must be done. You have to look at systems that will be taking place right now in Trinidad and Tobago. If we look right now, the majority of murders taking place have been by illegal firearms and by gangs. We could see 3,000 to 4,000 persons have been killed in the last decade by illegal firearms. Yet, the powers that be spend all of their times dealing with legal firearms. And that is where it is, you see sometimes political pettiness has a big part to play in the make or break of crime. When the leader of the opposition decided to speak about stand your ground, let me clarify the importance of that. This was not the nonsense and the lies of persons trying to shoot at someone if they jump in your yard to steal a mango. We are speaking about the present situation and the environment, that if someone breaks into your home with a cutlass and is coming up your steps, you must go and look for a cutlass because they state what? It must be equal force. Total nonsense. It is your right to defend yourself. It is your right to have a firearm if the state is unable to properly protect you. And that is what stand your ground is. It is to make sure that you don't have to second guess. Because you second guess, you would die. And it has proven that these firearms can be critical towards saving lives. And as I go with the policy and the concern, as I said, the gang legislation, it is not working. So what do? We are, right now, the country is drowning in blood. And the policies that we have seen, there have been none in the last 7 years. The present administration, they do not understand. There's no one that's an expert in national security. They don't have the tactical know-how. So if you look at the gangs, as I said, they are no longer just individuals in three-quarter pants. These are organized persons. They are well-structured and they have massive financial support. In other words, these gangs can be referred to now as a small army. They can be referred to as militants. And I'm sure where I'm going with this. This is now a matter that is beyond policing. As the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they are not trained to deal with a massive armed conflict, which is why the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force took over in 1990. I was the youngest officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force then, so I knew. I used my military training in 2020 when 150 men tried to storm into Port-of-Spain to destroy the city. Had I not been there, the city would have been destroyed, similar to what happened in 1990, which is why the police, it is not just a policing matter anymore. The reason I'm stating this is that the gangs now, we need to find solutions to deal with the gangs. They are a small army. They are no longer just, as I said, persons just going out and killing here and there. If we look at it from that perspective, we need to understand the meaning of the word terrorism and terrorists. If a person who has an unlawful, as a reason to commit unlawful violence and intimidation, especially to citizens, that person can and should be deemed a terrorist. We have persons here, these criminal elements, they have assault weapons, automatic weapons that can fire 35 rounds in 3 seconds. 35 rounds in 3 seconds. Let me show what that means. If it is that 5 of them stand up here right now, everyone in this room could be killed in 3 seconds. If that is not a terrorist, I don't know what is. That is what these individuals have. Now let us compare that to the Jamat in 1990, when you had 100 untrained persons using muskets, and a handful of people were killed. They were known as terrorists. I would recommend what we need to do is to look at the same Anti-Terrorism Act, and another country has done it recently. If we place these individuals where they belong as terrorists, it now provides that opportunity for 2 things. It now ensures that we can go after these individuals with full force, where it is that it will be non-bailable. They will now be, it is like a sentence as a capital punishment, compared to 12,000 well-trained members of the defense force and the police that can go after these criminals, peg them back. It worked before. I was able to do it with just 100 persons known as the Special Operation Response Team. It put fear in the criminals, it pegged them back, and it was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. So, as I close, I want to stay within the 15 minutes here. As I said, it can open a window for the defense force to operate. It will now give them the opportunity to be involved in operations. Jamaica, in fact, has the same thing that happens right now. They go along something known as a zone special operations. That zone of special operations allows the defense force to go in there with clinical operations to go after these gang members, these terrorists, these persons who have caused each and every one of you to be fearful. As I close, we can change this. We can transform Trinidad and Tobago. It requires the political will. Unfortunately, if it is that we provide the policy, the programs, the tools, the individuals who are in position right now may not have the capability or may not even want to do it. So 2 things we can do. We can at least prepare, as we are doing now, by proper dialogue with you, the citizens of this great country. And if it is that those that are in authority, who will be leaving office shortly, democratically, do not want to accept it, at least we will be prepared, we will have the foundation. So when we are in that position, we can hit the ground running and we do not need a honeymoon period. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give Captain Gary Griffith a round of applause? Before we welcome Professor Daisley, Gary has given us so many pointers that we can develop upon. But I think a very important point he has made is just the beginning and a continuation of reducing crime in Trinidad and Tobago. We can share with you the statistics. We can see, as Gary told us, where the crimes increased every year from 2015 onwards to the present time. In fact, we had the most murders in the history of Trinidad and Tobago last year. And this year that trend continued with, again, the second highest number of murders in our country. And whilst that is happening, the detection rate continues to decrease. So where in 2015 we had a detection rate of about 20%, that is down now to 13%. Don't tell me then that you are dealing with crime. Don't tell me that you're refusing to talk to citizens. You live it every day. And I thank you, Gary, for your experience, sharing it with us. And this is not the be-all or end. This is a continuation, but also the beginning for us to craft a policy. You will say, opposition leader, you are not in government. That's okay. We have a duty to our country and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is where we will work with you to develop proposals that we can implement. And that time will come sooner than you think. I thank you, and I'll ask Nicholas to introduce our next panelist.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue with our program this evening, I've been asked to inform you, as the political leader and the leader of the opposition would have stated earlier, we'd have an open floor session for you to give your ideas and your issues. But we also have with us pens and papers and notepads available for those of you who want to just put your suggestions down without going to the mic. So MP Ratiram and MP Amin will be passing around shortly. So those of you who wish to take the notepads and put your ideas down, we will surely collect it after. Ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist is a true patriot. Professor Hubert Daisley is a professor and chairman of anatomical pathology at the University of the West Indies, Trinidad and Tobago. He's an educator. He's a consultant pathologist and dermapathologist. He's also an associate tutor and course director of forensic and legal medicine at the Hubert Law School. He's also the consultant pathologist at both the San Fernando General Hospital and Scarborough Hospital. His research interests are general pathology and forensic medicine. Professor Daisley is also a fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine and member of the International Society of Gynepathology and International Retrovirology. Professor Daisley has been listed as one of the most noteworthy pathologists in the world and an educator by Marquis Who Is Who. Let's welcome this evening Professor Hubert Daisley.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Senior Counsel, Ms. Kamala Prasad, Members of Parliament, Senators, members of the Foreign Mission, other invited guests, the press, welcome. I took this opportunity today to speak a bit about crime in Trinidad and Tobago. It is really disturbing. And is frightening. There are all sorts of crimes in Trinidad and Tobago, and they have soared beyond control. What I would speak about, really and truly speaking, would be more gun violence. This has plagued Trinidad and Tobago for quite a while, and something needs to be done. If it is not done, then we all would die, because we all are threatened by this menace of gun violence. Can I have the first line? Now, as I have a little definition here of crime. Crime is an intentional commission of an act usually deemed socially harmful or dangerous and specifically defined, prohibited and punishable under criminal law. Crimes may be variously considered as wrong against individuals, against the community, or the state. One of the basic premises that you would hear from time to time is that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by their Creator with certain rights, that among these are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These basic rights are now under threat by groups of criminals, young men, gangs in our society. We are here this evening to have discussion on crime so as to restore law and order, so as to reclaim our basic rights of life, liberty, and happiness. Murder stalked our land even in the beginning of time, as was noted in Genesis 4, when Cain killed Abel, his brother, for which he was punished by the Lord. Crime has no place in civil society, for it disrupts the peace and harmony of normal life. Laws were made so each individual are protected in society and can seek the pursuit of happiness. The nation of Trinidad and Tobago is under siege by young black men, criminals, gangs, who threaten our very existence. Each and every citizen is under threat of losing their lives by the gun violence that litter our communities, streets, home on a daily basis. We sat by over the years and allowed the disease that is this crime to go unchecked until we are now literally faced with extermination. For any and every one of us can fall victim at any time. In the earlier years, murder in Trinidad and Tobago was sparse and full of drama. Some of you all might be old enough to remember these. Crimes were more or less like what you see Agatha Christie, the murder she wrote, or like Sherlock Holmes. They were full of drama and intrigue. The entire nation, I can remember, followed these stories from the detection to trial to conviction and execution. The Trinidad Guardian and the Evening News during those times sold like hotcakes whenever these murders took place. I would just mention a few, and I guess probably you might, my honorable friend, Dr. Gopi Singh. You might remember Dr. Dalip Singh, who murdered his Swedish-born wife, Ing Brong, in 1954. And he put her body in a sack, drove 40 miles with her body, and threw it in the sea off the Godino River. And that was a big thing during the time, as I said. Imagine that Dr. Dalip Singh during that period of time he assisted in doing the autopsy of his wife with the pathologist at that time, who was Dr. Barrow. However, he was convicted and he was executed in June 1955 in the Royal Jail. And those of you all might remember Boise Singh, the Raja, that gangster, that pirate, that murderer, and his accomplice Bolan, who terrorized the water between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. And it is reported that he was responsible for the death of 400 or so people. What he used to do, he operated a ferry, he and his gang, between Port of Spain and Venezuela, and midway he would rob the passengers and throw them overboard. He himself also was hanged in 1957, not for those crimes, but for the murder of a dancer by the name of Thelma Haynes. And I guess probably you could also remember this streak of crimes that were committed by the Pulul brothers in Caroni in the 1960s. Finally, well, as I said, one of the readings that I came across was the readings of Rafiq Shah, who is a prolific writer. He was my senior at Presentation College in Chaguanas, and I think you should read what Rafiq Shah has to say about those murders. Finally, one could have remembered Malcolm X or Michael de Freitas. And Michael de Freitas in 1975 was executed for the murder of his cousin Joseph Skerrett and an English girl by the name of Gail Ann Benson. This was a chap who was full of black power ideologies. He lived in England. He joined the Islam faith as a black Muslim. He was imprisoned in England. He returned to Trinidad, set up a commune in Christiana Gardens in Arima. And there they murdered these two individuals. However, there was a fire that destroyed the commune, and the bodies were discovered, and he was hung, executed for those murders. That murder was sung by the late Lord Kitchener, One to Hang. And there's a lot of intrigue, as I said, that went on during those particular period. Murder was sparse. In 1975, when Malik committed these murders, the population of Trinidad and Tobago was 1.05 million people. In 1975, there were 60 murders and 17 manslaughters and 9,793 crimes reported to the police. So in the year 1975, there were just 77 murders. But over the years, murders have galloped out of control. And you could see on the board there, in 1994, the number of murders was 143. And as the former Commissioner of Police has said, that it went into a galloping rage. In 2008, it was 550. I mean, this is moving from 75 or 77 to 550. And then something must have gone very wrong. For In 2021, it went to 448. In 2022, it went to 605. And in 2023, it went to 575. Something is obviously wrong. These figures send a chill through me when I see them. I remember as a young man going to Jamaica, and when I started my residency in pathology, those were not the figures in Trinidad. The figures in Jamaica at that time, we were experiencing 900 and something murders per year. And we are going to get there if something is not done drastically to curb these figures. Probably we were all asleep and not really following the trend and doing something about it. Look at the crime statistic in Trinidad and Tobago as compared to the rest of the Caribbean. Now, as I said, when I went to Jamaica, Jamaica was first. Look at what is happening here according to the crime index. The country that ranked first with crime index, that is according to population size and what have you, in the Caribbean is Trinidad and Tobago. And this is awful. Jamaica comes second, the Bahamas comes third, and Puerto Rico follows fourth. Now, if you look at the crime statistics of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of world crime statistics, you would see that Venezuela is first and Trinidad and Tobago is seventh. And this is awful. This is really awful. We were nowhere within the first 20 or 30 in years gone by. And we are seventh here, and yet still there don't seem to be a meaningful effort to pull those figures back and provide safe communities for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. It is interesting to see that Venezuela is in the #1 position. And I would ask the question, is there an input in serious crimes in Trinidad and Tobago for migrants and refugees? I don't know. This is a question I ask. And that is for the authorities to look into. Now, the situation in crime in Trinidad and Tobago is atrocious. And not only are we becoming prisoners in our home, but we are all, each and every one of us, are targets for serious crimes. We must eradicate, destroy this monster from our community. This is the most serious state of affair, and all hands are needed on deck to get rid of crime from our society, for you would lose your life and there surely would be no liberty and happiness for you. In my readings, I came across I think he's a young man by the name of Shane Superville. And Shane Superville, he wrote an article, I don't know if he's here, I've never seen the fellow, but he wrote an article in The Guardian and he spoke about murder rate slow for 2023, but fears, concern linger. No real sign things getting better. Now, this is a paper I think that everybody should read and understand where we are in terms of gun violence in Trinidad and Tobago. For instance, he says in 2023, gun continued to be the weapon of choice for criminals, with approximately 478 out of the 555 murders were committed using guns. That is 86% of the murders in 2023 were done by the use of a gun. For the same period in 2022, 509 murders out of 588 murders were committed using guns. And that worked out to be 87% of the murders that were committed in 2022 were by guns. And as the honorable leader of the opposition said, there was only an 11% detection, which meant out of the 509 murders, only 64 were solved. And that is unacceptable, to say the least. However, in his article, he continued, and this is where we have to understand what is going on in terms of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. He said that in October of that year, the Interagency Task Force discovered 35 assault rifles and 1,000 rounds of ammunition in Santa Cruz. In November of that same year, 13 assault rifles were discovered in Princestown. He then cited the areas of the hotspot where crime were committed in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think you all know where they are. But he continued, and he made a statement, and the statement here, which is very relevant to what my colleague spoke about. And he said, you may think that situation is very basic, but if we don't catch that little boy, he's going to grow up to be a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old that will be a real problem for the country. If we really need to solve crime, from the statistics that we need to get to the root cause of serious crime murders in Trinidad and Tobago. We need to get at the illegal guns. And we must ask where these illegal guns are coming from. They are really coming through the natural route. They are also coming from ports, unmanned ports along our coastline. And we need to monitor those areas because we need to stem the flow of these illegal firearms in the country. One has to understand what Mr. Gary Griffith said. I don't believe that the youths in Lavantil or the youths in Arima can buy these guns. There has to be somebody or some organization that is supplying them with this. And what we need to do is to get that organization. Until we could get at that organization or whoever it is, then we would have the youths being constantly lured into this organization, and the cycle of crime is not going to change. I really cannot finish what I'm saying because of the lack of time. But one of the things that we should do is that we need to get into the communities where the crime is runaway. And we need to get to the youths and understand exactly what their mindsets are, why it is that they would be driven into crime, and act on those problems, act on the reason for it. But as we know, crime is a multifaceted thing, and we need to approach it in that particular way. We need all hands on deck. We need to get into the school to stop the bullying and what have you. We need to get into the churches and get the priests and so forth aboard. We need very good policing, as the commissioner says. We need to have within the force people who have done criminology and psychologists and what have you, who would help in understanding the dilemma that we are in. We need to supervise the education that the kids are open to. We need to put things in place to mend the broken families. We need to create employment. Over the years, we have closed 2 major industries in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caroni Limited and the Petrotrin. And their closure obviously is having a negative effect on our economy, a negative effect on employment. And I think that probably there should be some way forward in trying to regenerate and revitalize these things. Then the criminal justice system that we have, they also must play a better role. Justice must be swift and punishment must be prohibitive. Why it is that a prisoner should remain 10 years in prison before he is called to trial? Something is obviously wrong there. I don't believe in capital punishment, but if it is in the statute, what is the problem? There must be rehabilitation, as my friend says here, for prisoners. And prisoners should be made to contribute to the national economy, just as what happens in China. Crime is a multifactorial problem, and it is not only solved by policing, but all the social factors must come into play in its solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Daisley, for your very erudite and taking us way back. I always remember as a child about Dr. Dalip Singh. It was a great mystery, and it was not something we ever had. You know, I also remember Professor, the name Mano Benjamin. Anybody here could remember that? Are you as young as I am? Yes? It was a horrendous crime, maybe the first of its kind, if it's kind. Prof? Maybe the first of its kind in Trinidad and Tobago. So we've come a long way, we've not come a better way from those days that you've reminded us. And I'm very happy you made a very, very important point that we seem to miss. And I was talking to Dr. Indira here, she says she will also develop it further, that these young persons are wielding all these kinds of guns. They don't have the money to buy those guns. And when you raise the main issue you said for us is gun violence, you told us the percentage of crimes being committed with guns, and therefore there must be a way in our looking for solutions. So how do we stem that inflow of the guns? And then we can't just blame the young men or young women out there with the guns, because at that point I think it's something we need to look further into. Where are they getting the money for those guns? Or who is arming them? Who is giving them these guns? I think that's a very important point. I was also thank you all very much. Let's recognize Professor for that point. I'm not sure if it has been made before, but it really struck me when I read it up on your screen and heard you. The second thing the professor shared with us is, so where are these guns coming from? Yeah. What then do we need to do? What the professor said to us, and he really had to skim through that part, and we certainly take your whole treatise today. I noticed on the screen, Prof, that you talked about what we do at our ports. Where are the guns coming from? They're not coming from the sky. They're coming through ports, whether the legal ports or the not legal ports, and therefore borders. The issue of our very porous borders. And I remember former Minister of National Security under our watch, Captain Griffith, and the team we had there, that we were very concerned about the very porous borders and how do we block these guns from coming in. We had several proposals for those, and we'll develop those another day, but today is not so much for us to speak, but for panelists. So I was very interested. You talked about the fishing ports, that we should have, protective services at these ports and all these other ports. Captain Griffith, remember that we wanted to get the, remind me, the maritime wall, to encircle us with a maritime wall, but also to go into the groves and the mangroves, those interceptors, not the big boats and ships, but the hovercraft. That's what I'm trying to remember. So, Prof, you're correct. Guns, number one issue in the country when it comes to serious crime. So we look further at the matters you've raised, and again, we want to thank you very, very much, Professor. Can we give him a round of applause? I want to remind you, before Nicholas introduces our final speaker for tonight, that we will close the discussion after that, panelists from us here. But we want to get your questions, your suggestions to the panelists or to any of us here. We really would appreciate your input. And we've given half of the time allotted today for that part of the exercise. So we are not just on the talk down. We want you to talk back to us, please. So we welcome that. And Nicholas, please introduce our final presenter for tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, you're joining us here for the opposition leaders' anti-crime town hall meeting as she fosters a united discussion to save and return security to every community and every family. This evening, our last panelist is a pioneer in political science and education within our Caribbean region. Dr. Indira Rampersad is the head of the Department of Political Science at the University of the West Indies. She's also the president of the West Indies Group of University Teachers, WIGOT, and lecturer in international relations. She was also a member of the Trinidad and Tobago government-appointed Cabinet Committee on Young Males and Crime in Trinidad and Tobago, chaired by the late Professor Selwyn Ryan. Other members of that committee were Professor of Gender and Cultural Studies Patricia Mohammed, former Dean of the Arts and General Studies at UE Dr. Marjorie Thorpe, and Independent Senator Dr. Lennox Bernard. Their report was laid in Parliament in 2013, titled No Time to Quit, Engaging Youth at Risk. Dr. Rampersad's research interests now extend to Latin American and Caribbean politics and international relations, American foreign policy, crime and violence in the Caribbean, as well as the Caribbean Court of Justice, international law, and Caribbean constitutional law. Dr. Rampersad has also served as a commissioner of the Equal Opportunity Commission of Trinidad and Tobago. She's also a qualified attorney at law and regular media commentator on national, regional, and international issues. Let us welcome Dr. Indira Rampersad.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, members of Parliament, senators, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good evening, I should say, and I do want to thank the Office of the Opposition for inviting me to present here today in an area in which I have researched extensively and I have published as well. Only today, I got news that 2 articles I had written and been waiting on information on what's happening on drugs, crime, and gangs would be, the book is actually published and the books are on their way to me. There are 2 chapters in books. So I have a number of publications and maybe you can see them on the screen. The crime report, which was just mentioned, I was the vice chair with Professor Selwyn Ryan. We call it the Ryan Report. And we also had Dr. Marjorie Thorpe, Professor Mohammed, and Dr. Lennox Bernard there. But since then, I continued to publish because that stirred my interest in the subject. But also, I have been personally affected, as I think many of you have been. If not by home invasion, by being held up. And so I continue to do my research. The university has a very robust research effort there. There's a group of people. We have a Center for Crime and Criminology at the university. There's really no reason why we should be having all this crime. We can't understand. That crime report, which was commissioned by the People's Partnership Government, headed by Rampersad Bisesa, is still quite relevant. I still send copies of it to people who are looking to do research, who want information. A lot of it is still quite relevant. The problem remains. The problem remains the same. Some of the causes are the same. Some of the consequences are the same. There may be some changes in the dynamics. Little changes, not big changes in the dynamics. But what we notice is that it has proliferated more. So it's greater. 2013 to 2023. It's 10 years now since we had that crime report. And it's now a lot more than it was before. So personally, we are affected. I mean, and any one of you here can say you're not affected by crime. I don't think you'll be telling the truth. You live in mortal fear. We live in fear. You see a strange car in your street, you want to know if it's bandits. You know, it happened to me yesterday, my neighbor calling me, a strange car in the street, middle of the work, doing work, getting this presentation ready, we work, whatever work. Middle of the night, the guns are ringing out in St. Augustine from all sides. Neighborhood Watch Alive in the WhatsApp chat. What's going on? You all heard that? And you're working, we're working, your car work. How can you work in this kind of environment? I like to run, I like to jog around the university. University is enclosed, I ain't taking the chance. Can't go to the beach, we're afraid to go to the beach. I started to go to Tobago to go to the beach. And then the gangs reach there too. So where do we go? What kind of life we have? What kind of family life we have? What kind of personal life we have? Even the workspace is affected. You're afraid to come out because you see a strange person in the street and you're afraid to come out of your gate because you don't know if this is a bandit. And this is the life we're living. They're walking with grinders and bolt cutters and they're cutting. They are burglar proof in your homes. So you buy up, you spend a set of money buying up every door, window, nook and cranny in the house. To the point when you forget something, you have to spend a good 10 minutes getting in and coming back out. So you're always late. But the point is that you're living in fear. Now, I didn't plan to say this, but all of this is coming to my mind when I heard the former presentations. It's just abject fear. And yes, there is a correlation between crime and migration. Because when you can't take it no more, if you could afford, you leave. You just pack up your bundle and you go. Because you can't take it no more. What do? The safety of your home, your family, it's paramount. You need to protect them. You can't protect them here and you're not getting the protection that you need from the state. So I have here, a lot of academic stuff, which I don't know if I'm going to go through. How did we get here? That is one of the things when the crime committee met. We spent days on end discussing how did we get here. And this was in 2013. It wasn't as bad as it is in 2023, 2024. How did we get here? And we started to look at some of the history. I have title here, Colonialism and Beyond. And we saw some of the root causes of crime and colonialism. But it goes beyond that, and we don't want to hide behind colonialism and slavery. I always tell my students, you look at that, but you look at a lot of other things that happened. We've had independence since 1962. We need to get out of that and stop blaming colonialism and slavery for everything, and indentureship. We need to get away from that. Okay, so there were a lot of things that were happening, and many of our researchers have researched some of the culture of violence that existed during the colonial period. We had the extermination of the Amerindians in the first place, which itself was a violent exercise. We had enslavement of the Africans. That was a violent form of forced labor. The slave masters used to flog and whip the slaves, maintaining discipline and control. Corporal punishment was the order of the day. Okay, so you had violence among slaves, between slaves. Then you have child abuse during that time, during that period. You had a lot of child abuse, because if you are beaten, you know, the psychologists and the psychiatrists will tell you that you tend to beat your children as well. So child abuse and brutality was also very pervasive during that slavery era. The carnivals, they say also, they had something called the Jamet Carnival and the Cambole. You will remember the Cambole riots, 1881. The steel pan movement, there was a lot of violence between, in the 1940s and 50s, between these steel band groups and between the steel pan and the police. So we have Professor Brereton writing a lot about this culture of violence in the Caribbean, and Trinidad and Tobago in particular. You know, under the Professor Earl Lovelace stated that those were the days when every district around Port of Spain was its own island, and the steel band within its boundaries was its army providing warriors to uphold its sovereignty. Those were the war days when every street corner was a garrison. So what we're witnessing now is a garrison-style behavior. Garrison-style behavior, which is very evident in Jamaica in recent times. But Jamaica now, as Professor Daisley has shown, Professor Daisley, you taught me law at Hubert. I don't know if you would remember, but you were my professor. Yes, he's shown the Jamaica statistics have reduced. Jamaica has less crime now than Trinidad because Jamaica is doing what it takes to alleviate the crime. You know, you can't just hold a weapon in your hand and walk around the place in Jamaica now. The legislation that passed with regards to weapon possession, possession of arms and ammunition. They've been very, very strict with those things. So there are measures that can be taken. We're not just taking them. The political will is not there. I think that is the primary problem. Political will is not there to deal with this crime problem. So, you know, the history also spawned a lot of bad Johns, and I come from New Grand Princestown, that same village from where Mr. Pandey hails, and that is where stick fighting originated. I remember my father came home one day with his head bleeding. My mother would always tell us about this. My father used to be involved in stick fighting. He couldn't fight, but he got to join the fun. So, you know, that is part of the history as well. But again, the reason why I entitled this thing Colonialism and Beyond is because we just can't dwell on history, blame the problems of the past, and say, okay, that is why we have crime. The East Indian indentureship also, we had a culture of violence there. Now we say, a lot of people are talking about, you know, little black boys, and that was heavily discussed in the Ryan report. But we also looked at this notion of crime amongst the East Indian community, particularly domestic violence and the proclivity for alcohol abuse. And I wrote about that alcohol abuse phenomenon. And we hear what they're singing in the chutney show. You know, what is rum kill my mother, rum till I die, was Guinness and puncheon, right? Yes, so those kinds of things, you know, it's sort of evoking this whole notion of cravings for alcohol, which is precipitating, and it's not just amongst the Indian community, eh? Trinidadians like the grog. Trinidadians like the rum. It's not just the Indian community on the whole, and that is also, you know, precipitating the crime. So we have alcohol abuse as one of the problems. Now there are also sociological issues, a sociological dimension to this. And that, when I talk about sociological dimension, we're talking about, for example, the education system. Now I don't want to say that the education system has failed. I am a beneficiary of the education system. Many of us have been educated in Trinidad and Tobago, but there are clear fallacies in the education system. And one of the problems was that junior secondary school. A junior secondary school spawned generations of young people who had half-day idle. Half-day idle. I used to teach in one. I used to see how they behave. They had a lot of free time on their hands, some of them under no supervision. So we have these sociological impulses. I wouldn't say it has failed. We have students that are excelling all over the world. You know, we see scholarship winners coming out and doing very, very well. So we can't say it's totally failed. But a lot of that would be also because they beat the system. They managed to beat the system. We also have dynamics of ethnicity, class, and gender, and this whole notion of racial profiling. You know, I was commissioned, one of the chapters of the book that I did was on violence against Afro-Trinidadian women. Now, I wanted to do the chapter on violence against women, but the editor said, no, we're doing a book on Afro women and Mexico and different countries in the world, so you have to stick to that. So while I did all the research on women, they said, no, take out that. Leave only the Afro woman part. It was fine, and I did it, got it published. And what I found, these were my findings. Why are Afro women subject to such violence? A lot of these women are being killed by ex-husbands and boyfriends, jealous, revenge, and rage. They may be the baby mother, or as they say, the mother of the child. And when they leave the guy, whether it's divorce or separation, the guy coming back for them because he can't take it. He can't take it. The class dynamic is also linked to this ethnic factor. And one of the things we have to understand is that it's not only underprivileged youths that are involved in gangs. Some of the research found that, some of these gang members are educated. They come from middle-class families. Money is not a problem. Okay? We do have at-risk youths, high unemployment and underemployment. Now, this is a real problem right now in the country. We are graduating students every year, and now a lot of them are doing master's degrees, and they're coming out and they cannot get employment commensurate with their education. So students with master's degrees are coming out and working as clerical officers if they find a job. I have 2 OJTs in my office right now, OJTs with degrees, and they're doing master's degrees. Then we have to look at the role of the elites. This is another class dimension in fostering the drugs and the arms trade and promoting gang activities. So she was asking the question. And I have that question too because I have a picture there. You all remember the Santa Cruz bus in October? That Santa Cruz bus, I remember I was looking at the TV carefully because I had protest march that day, and I say, okay, I'm going to get the headlines, and then come the Santa Cruz bus and take away my headlines. And I say, oh my God. But the point is, whatever it was they were doing, whether I was really a bus or not, I ain't getting there. Where all them guns come from? Who bringing in them guns? How are they getting into the country? Now, Commissioner of Police might be able to answer that better than me, and I wish he would. But the point is, we have sharks and barracudas, and herons and small fries. Okay? And they would rather say, bring in the ammunition in, and people afraid to talk. Because you see some people lying on the side of the road, they ain't do nobody nothing, and next thing you hear, they get shot down. They get shot because somebody afraid that they will squeal. Okay, now I don't know, I don't have the names. What I am saying is that this whole notion of class is something we have to look at. Something that we have to look at. Okay, so I spoke about gender as well. Now in the university is 2-to-1 we graduate in male to female. 2-to-1. So the women are coming out now, and where they're going to find husbands qualified like them. Because they married men who are less qualified. And when the honeymoon is over, the fella now starts to feel real insecure because she's bringing in more money than me. Then he has started to drink, then start to beat her. Then also he may get involved in crime and gang activism. All right, some say the soca music is fast beat. They say it's I think, yet to be proven. But the one thing we have to understand is there's a connection between crime and the drug trade and the arms trade. The ammunition sometimes are coming in with the drugs because they have to protect the drugs. They have to protect the drugs. Now, the drugs is a transnational trade. Okay, the drugs are coming in from Bolivia and Colombia, the white stuff, because that can't grow in the Caribbean. Okay, the coca leaves, that cannot grow in the Caribbean. Caribbean is producing the marijuana. St. Vincent and Jamaica, we're getting that from, a lot of it. We're not growing so much, you know. We're consuming some marijuana, but we're not really consuming a lot of cocaine. It's not, big consumption is not the issue. The issue is that the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago is a geostrategic location. We're a transshipment point where the drugs coming in from there, South America, landing here, okay, somebody bringing it with the arms, and then it is being transshipped to North America, to Europe, Canada included, and some other countries. So that is how the Caribbean is caught up in this thing. And the drug trade is global, it's international, and is big, big money. So why are these young boys going for the drug trade, going into drugs and crime and gangs, a lot of them? It's easy. You don't have to study. You don't have to burn the midnight oil. Okay, it's very, very easy. So we don't know what else to do. We have a lot of proposals. I have some here, but my time is up. Some of them, the crime report is full of recommendations. That's one of the things we made sure we do. We say we're not going to just find the problem and discuss how and why, but we are going to discuss how to deal with the problem, at least alleviate it if we cannot resolve it completely. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think that I believe that the academic community at any rate is doing what it has to do in terms of the research. I believe that the partnership government tried, okay, and we know what the state of emergency caused. I think we need a state of emergency every day now. Every time I hear those guns ringing out around me, I think we need a state of emergency. So with that, I want to leave you. There is one other thing I will take 1 minute. To the parents out there, you know, I have been an educator for decades, a very long time. And I can tell you that the students of today are not the students of yesterday. There is this Gen Z culture